The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Spouses Talking Houses with husband and wife real estate team Jennifer and Brian Frost. Everything you want to know about buying, selling, investing, and owning property. So let's get real about real estate.
Welcome back to Spouses Talking Houses. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Brian.
And today we have a guest with us, Nikki Hancock.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
nice
Nikki.
to see you.
Good to see you.
And we are going to get real about waterfront properties.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us,
My
Nikki.
want This is one of my favorite topics.
Well, that's why we invited you. So Nikki is a fellow colleague at our office.
Yeah.
You want to tell me how long you've been in real estate?
I have been in the business, seems like a long time, but only 5 years, which is not that long compared to many people in our office, which is nice to have that experience.
Some old timers
around
like
this.
us, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Hey,
but
speak for yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 years, you got your sea legs, right?
You do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like any new business. It takes time to really learn it and turn it around and then have a solid client base. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
there. It feels good.
That's great. And you do a lot of different things in real estate.
I do. Yeah. The real estate agent, which is fun. I also work for a title company, conducting closings as a closing agent for them. And that's been a huge education opportunity for me, as well as just getting to know different people in our industry in the area, agents and lenders and all of that, just kind of building my network.
That's
So,
great. That's great.
keeps me busy.
And so you're part of the Inspire Realty Group, is that
I
correct?
am. Yeah. We're based out of Keller Williams Metropolitan as well. There's a group of 8 of us now.
Yeah.
So and that also we have a wide range of experience on that team too, which is really beneficial, from about 18 years all the way down to just a few months.
All right,
So,
great,
it's nice.
great.
Growing
So,
family.
what do you like about the real estate lifestyle? What are you doing for fun when you're not working?
Ooh, well, I think if any real estate agent's being honest, you're working all the time, right? You're
know.
always
I know.
checking your emails, checking your texts and stuff. But it's summertime here, so my family does live. We have a lake house, so we've been spending a lot of time there. And yeah, I have my pilot's license, so I like to go fly when I have a little bit of extra time.
That's awesome.
So kind of take half a day to go on a little adventure.
So,
local stuff.
so when you go fly, do you usually go to a destination, or you just go sort of loop around and enjoy the view and then come back
It
down?
kind of depends on how much time I have and who's with me.
Okay.
So if it's someone who's hasn't really flown in a small plane before, we just kind of do a quick tour up the coast and back. But if it's someone that's more confident in a little plane, we can do short trips like to the Vineyard or Nantucket and have lunch. A lot of these small local airports around here have restaurants.
Oh,
So you can just stop and have lunch and watch the planes and, get
Oh,
back on the ground for a few minutes. And then
so I
go
would
back
be
up.
tempted for that.
No thanks.
Yeah, Brian doesn't like the big planes, so I don't know if we're going to
I
get him on a little plane.
Did one puddle jumper over to
Was
with
it the Bahamas?
from Florida, and
Yeah.
that scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's a lot of water.
I don't like being able to see the pilot when I'm flying. That's just me.
I like that wall of security.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yours is not even as big as a puddle jumper. It's just a couple people.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
three adults max.
Like a Cessna or
Yep, it's a little Piper Warrior.
Piper Warrior.
Low
Okay.
wings.
Okay,
Yeah, you got to climb up on the wing to get in.
Oh, that's pretty
Yeah,
cool. That's
so-
awesome.
It's fun.
Well, you are my go-to person when we talk about waterfront properties, and we have a wide variety of different lakes and ponds. There's some riverfront and some oceanfront, but mostly it's lakes and ponds that I run into. If somebody is looking for something that's waterfront, what kind of questions do you ask them to help narrow down the type of property or the type of lake?
Well, I think you kind of hit on the first part, just with what you just said. There are different options in southern New Hampshire, which is one of the great draws of southern New Hampshire is you're close to the city, you're close to the mountains, and you're close to the ocean. So when someone says they want waterfront, you do have to kind of drill down with them. Are they wanting the ocean? Are they wanting the river? Or are they wanting a lake? And where we generally work in this Wyndham, Salem, Derry, Londonderry, kind of up to Bow and Concord area, it's mostly lakefront that they're talking about.
Right.
But then it's over time having conversations with them of how do they envision themselves and their family using that waterfront? Because there's different restrictions on different bodies of
Yeah.
water here. And so it's really kind of figuring out how they envision their time there and what's important to them.
Right. So in some cases you can swim, and in other cases you can't. In some you can use motorboats, and in some you can't. So there's all different types of water bodies and restrictions.
Right, right. I have great friends who live on Canopy Lake,
Mm-hmm.
and Canopy Lake is a water source for the town of Salem. So there
The
are
reservoir, yeah.
restrictions on that.
Right.
Right. So you can't swim
Right.
there, and you can't have like a personal watercraft, like a wave runner or a jet ski
Oh, right,
type thing.
right.
But that was perfect for them. They don't want all that activity and
They
traffic.
just want the view.
They just want the view,
Yeah.
and they just have a small
Go out with a
pontoon
rowboat,
boat and
yeah.
just
Well, and
Yeah.
you see a lot of bigger boats on that because it is a big lake. And you have the fireworks because of the Canopy Lake Park, which is cool. I've seen some houses on Canopy Lake that have a pool.
Mhm.
So you swim in your pool and you boat on your lake.
Right.
And I'd be fine with that.
Or you go over to the water park at Canopy.
Yes.
You know, so.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a pond and a lake?
Ooh, trivia time.
Yeah.
I believe it's acreage. Acreage.
Is it?
No,
It's
it's
not.
not.
I don't
No.
think it is.
No.
No.
It's just like there's no difference between a road and a street.
Okay.
It's just different names.
It's just
Okay.
what they decided to
Yeah.
call it, I guess.
Now, does that fall into the category of a Great Lake?
So a great pond or a great body of water in New Hampshire is anything that is 10 acres or more.
Okay.
And there's certain regulations in regards to those waters. One thing that I guess I'd realized, most of the towns around here have some sort of a body of water. It's very rare that I run into a town that doesn't have a pond or a lake or something somewhere. But most of those waters are considered public waters. So if your pond or lake is 10 acres or more, then the state says that the private owner owns the land that they own, but the public has an easement to use the water.
Mhm.
And a lot of times there's either a public boat launch or a public beach or both.
And that's such an important factor when you're talking with your clients, again, about the use and their desire and how they envision that, them enjoying that home that they're purchasing.
Right.
I know Big Island Pond, which sits in the middle of Derry, Hampstead, and Atkinson.
Right,
All three
yep.
of those towns are on that. That is a private lake in the sense
There's
that
no public access.
there's no public access.
Right.
Anyone who has a home on that lake has access, on their waterfront to that. And then there's some associations around that lake that they have deeded access rights, a right of way.
Yeah.
Some of them have a little community beach area where they can do that. There is a boat launch on that lake. The state actually stocks that lake with fish.
Oh, okay.
And because they do that, the lake association has to allow fishermen on that lake.
So it doesn't matter what state you're from, or
Well, to get onto that boat launch, there's a gate with a key, and you have to register a fishing boat.
Okay.
So you can't register your pontoon boat or your.
Interesting.
It has to be a fishing boat.
Yeah.
And you're signing up and saying that you're using it for the purpose of fishing.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remember a few years back there was an island property for sale there, but there was no access from the outside. So you had to know somebody who had access to the lake in order to get access.
It can get
to
very
put your
tricky.
boat on the pond and then get over to the island. Yeah.
And I actually think that was the Armstrong house that you're talking about.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember that. Yeah.
No, Shepherd, not Armstrong.
Okay.
Shepherd, Alan Shepherd House.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
They used to have a vacation house on a small island.
All right.
A Scumbit Island.
Okay,
there
yes,
On Big Island
yeah.
Pond, and that recently changed hands, and that's part of the struggle when the deeds change and owners change their mind on what they want to allow to transfer with the property.
Yeah.
And that's comes back to the point of really talking with your clients, figuring out what they want, because if they want to have a boat in, if they want maybe access to a boat mooring,
Right. Yeah.
all of that's going to be in your deed.
Yes.
So when you're researching that, the deed for a waterfront property is going to lay out if you're allowed to have a dock on that property, or if there's a mooring associated with that property.
Yeah. Or if there's, as you said, a neighborhood beach, like a neighborhood association beach, there's a lot of small little areas that are like that. And what I found, one of the things you run into is sometimes people will want to be in a subdivision style neighborhood on the lake, and that's extremely rare. I could think of one or two on Canopy. But most of the time what happened is it's very campy. And the lakes were all developed with property prior to zoning. If you lived in the Boston area prior to the turn of the century, you didn't have air conditioning, and people would literally just come up to the lakes and the mountains and stay up in New Hampshire for the summer and then go back down to the city. So a lot of those structures, when you pull into those neighborhoods, you will see something that is very campy. And then right next to it, you will see something that's been rebuilt that might be 3 stories and extremely nice and high end. And it's just always going to be a mix.
Yeah. And I've seen that so much in the lakes around here, all the way from southern New Hampshire up to Bow. There's a beautiful lake, Babusick Lake up there. And you do have that mix of what we call camps in New England. And then the year-round homes. And that ties back again to your client. It's always going back to what your client is looking for. Because if they want that year-round home in that kind of neighborhood feel, you really have to take a drive around and look and say, okay, is most of what here kind of camp, seasonal? You're going to have people coming up to maybe party on the weekends or just relax here and there, or maybe they're going to get rented out often.
I was wondering if there's a lot more Airbnb now too.
Yeah. And or are they kind of in an area where things have switched over and they've been converted to year-round homes and they've been updated and upgraded, and you have a community feel with people there year-round.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And then, so you need a permit for your dock, and some of them are grandfathered from what I understand. But if you go to make any alterations to your dock, you have to go get a new permit.
You do, and can definitely be restrictions on those permits. I believe the DES website outlines that.
Yeah, I've got a frequently asked questions here.
Yeah, it has to run perpendicular to the property. Can't run parallel. So a lot of times when you're seeing those L-shaped docks where people kind of fitting in more boats, might not necessarily be in line with what DES is saying. So you have to hope you have some nice neighbors.
So the permits are all issued by the state. Is that correct?
It's my understanding.
It's my understanding too, yeah. And I had a suggestion once from a title company about if you have a dock permit, or particularly if you have one that's kind of grandfathered that goes back, record it at the Registry of Deeds. Make sure that that's public record and doesn't get lost somewhere in the shuffle.
Absolutely. You should see that on your deed. And owners have a right to remove that from their deed when they go to sell their property.
So they can keep their dock?
So, yeah, or remove it. I have firsthand knowledge of sellers who were selling a home that had a right-of-way to the lake. And in that right-of-way on the deed, it had access to a dock. And when they sold it, they removed that. Okay.
And forgot to tell the buyers? Or?
No, but it makes But when you're talking about waterfront property or water view property or water access property, it's so important to get into those details, because you could assume, we're across the street from the water, we have this great view, and it looks like there's a worn path there.
Right.
But that might not stay with the property.
Right.
You got to look at those details and have your title company help you research that so you know exactly what you're buying. And it's gonna change the value of the property for resale down the road.
Because sometimes you do have a deeded easement for right of way to the water, and that might be for a whole neighborhood. Might just be one little parcel that's like the little local beach, or other times it's just a path between 2 houses that maybe 3 or 4 houses share.
Sure.
Yeah. And if it's not recorded, And I've done some research. We had sold one recently in, was it Chase's Grove? Colette's Grove.
Colette's Grove,
Mhm.
yeah.
And
That's on Big Island Pond as well.
Yes, it is.
exactly.
And
And
there.
I had really gone back to the original deeds
Mhm.
because it was a hand-drawn subdivision plan, and that was the subdivision law in New Hampshire actually came out after those lots were sold. So it was very interesting to read back and see the history of it. But there was some stuff there that people have done forever and ever and ever, and everybody knows it, but it is not in the deed.
Right, right.
It is not recorded anywhere.
It comes down to the basis of our business in these transactions. Always comes down to what does the contract say?
Right.
What does the paperwork say?
Right. What can you prove?
And that's what it's going to hold up when
Exactly.
it comes to it.
Yeah.
And as an agent looking at this, there's only so much you can be educated on ahead of time, and a lot of this
Right.
knowledge comes from experience and all
Mhm.
of that. So for a buyer, it's have realistic expectations of your agent. If you're looking at waterfront within a 2-hour radius, they're not going to know every detail about everything.
No, they can't.
But
Yeah.
really slow down and take the time as the agent to have your buyer do their due diligence, for
Mhm.
you to do your due diligence, pull in other experts so that they really know what they're buying, because waterfront homes often come at a premium price.
Sure.
Right.
So
right.
it's a big financial decision, which turns into an emotional decision. So you really want your clients to know exactly what they're buying.
And if they're thinking they're going to pave a driveway or add a garage or put on an addition, replace the septic system, any type of alterations that you are making near wetlands is a lot more heavily regulated.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And something I say to my clients, and you probably say it as well, when you're just looking at regular homes and they're dreaming about how they could change it or make it
Mhm.
more functional,
Mhm.
you always say, well, everything's doable with enough money.
Right,
You
exactly.
can do anything
Yeah,
if you have
and make sure you
if you
structurally
have the
support it
money
and
for
pull a
it.
permit. Yeah.
And that's not true in waterfront.
Right.
It's not necessarily
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
Because they're
Just cutting down a tree is a big issue. So
Right, because you need to protect the natural environment, and then anytime that a property is transferred on one of these great bodies,
Mhm.
okay, and there is a list, by the way, on the New Hampshire DES website of which bodies of water fall under that. But anytime you sell something that the lot line is within 200 feet of the shore. So it doesn't matter where the structures are. If any part of the property is within 200 feet of the shore, you have to have a site assessment. And the site assessment is typically done by somebody who is a septic designer or a civil engineer or surveyor. And they are recording where the septic is in relationship to the water. And that's supposed to be available and provided to the buyer prior to purchase and sale agreement.
Exactly. So that
yeah.
burden falls on the seller.
It does, yeah.
To have prepared and
Yeah.
provide to the buyer before the transaction.
Yeah, and there have been times where I've been on the buyer side and I've said something to the listing agent. And they're like, "Oh, but we're not waterfront." Doesn't matter. You're across the street from the water. You're within 200. Was it feet or yards?
It is
now that I
200
said it,
I
it's
believe
feet.
it's 200
It's
feet.
200 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, so two football fields, and then there's some small.
No, that wouldn't be 2 football fields.
No, it would. Oh no, that would be yards.
That would, well,
I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, 200 feet. So 300 feet would be one football field. Is that right?
I'm here to correct you. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Oh, Brian, are you the fact checker?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
You can use a previous site assessment study if nothing has changed. So I always thought you had to get a new one every time you transferred, but that's not the case. There's an environmental fact sheet from New Hampshire DES that I just print out and hand out to any of my buyers or sellers who are working with waterfront.
So you
Yeah.
just have to sign off that nothing has changed since the last one, or?
Yeah, I wonder who.
If no
certifies that.
changes occurred to the information, the property owner and assessor may certify that no
Okay.
change to the information is required. Usually when I get a site assessment, it's about like $350.
Mhm.
Is that about
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
find? Yeah.
Yeah, and my peace of mind as an
I would
agent,
just do it.
I would have them get a new one.
Yeah.
I would.
Definitely.
I agree.
Um,
Because what if?
Yep.
Yeah.
What if?
What
You
if?
don't want the call. I don't want that call.
No, I
Yep.
don't want that call.
Plus, you might be reselling that home down the road. or you may not because
Right.
you didn't do it right the first time.
And when you replace septic systems, you've got a lot of considerations with them being environmentally friendly and having a small footprint.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of factors.
Yep.
But the reward and the payoff is
Yeah,
it's
so
just
let's
so great.
talk about
So
the
fun.
reward and the payoff. What do you love about the lake?
Oh, geez. Well, I think there's something so wonderfully calming about any type of water, being near water. I just think it's good for your soul. So, yeah, my family, we were fortunate. They purchased a waterfront house about 10 years ago, and it's just
It's a
great.
beautiful spot. Yeah,
It is
we've
a
been
beautiful
there.
spot. Yeah. And it's beautiful year round, which I think is something that people don't necessarily think about on waterfront property. Right now we're in July, so it's kind of the water is
Peak,
warm
yeah.
and the trees are green and there's beautiful sunsets and the seaplane is landing every evening, just stuff like that. But year round, there's always something to look at. You know, the snow falling and foxes running on the ice and
Playing hockey.
ice fishing and snowmobiling and snowshoeing and all of that, and watching the leaves change in the fall. And there's just always something to look at.
Music courtesy of the Eric Lindbergh Trio. Please visit his website at www.ericlindberghworld.com. Jennifer and Brian are licensed to practice real estate in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Brian is also a certified general appraiser in New Hampshire. They are not lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, or therapists. Real estate customs and rules may be different in your area. Each Keller Williams Realty office is independently owned and operated. The realtor name is trademarked to members of the National Association of Realtors. If you are currently under contract with a real estate agent, this is not intended as a solicitation. Views expressed on this podcast by Jennifer may not be shared by Brian and vice versa, nor are they necessarily the views of Keller Williams Realty.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.